Welcome back to the Snowpoint Cast. Today we're going to be looking at a deck from 2011 called Stage 1's. So this deck saw a decent amount of success in 2011. Got a second place finish at the US Nationals in 2011 by Kyle Pukasukovic. And the deck also got top 16 at the World Championships in the Masters Division in 2011 with Dylan Bryan getting a top 16 with this deck as well. A little bit different lists. And this is not going to be either of their lists, kind of just a modified, up-to-date recent list because just this format has had a fair amount of innovation in the last couple years. But let's get right into it. So starting off with 3 Fampy. This Fampy's got 60 HP, 2 retreat, resistance to lightning, and a weakness to water. And then the poke body on it is actually kind of neat. So it's called Ultra Thick Skin. Ultra Thick Skin says as long as Fampy has any energy attached to it, any damage done to Fampy by attacks is reduced by 10. So kind of neat. And if you have an energy attached there, then it means you're taking 10 less from Earthquake. So it's kind of an Earthquake counter. The real reason I think that these are not my decks, but the reason that I think my buddy Josh has this in is because this particular Fampy is a really cool like Japanese promo one, and I think he just wanted to use them. So I think I'll put another one up. There's a Flail one, and I think the Flail one is probably better. But Ultra Thick Skin is also kind of niche in some situations. It's good. And then this one also has an attack. So Rock Smash for fighting in colors. Flip a coin of heads. This attack does 20 damage plus 10 more. So you can potentially do 30, which is actually a pretty good number. You can hit some baby Pokemon for a knockout, or hit a Magnemite, or like some stuff if you're forced to attach to it and don't hit the Dawnfan on turn 2. It is at least a decent attack. Okay, so speaking of Donphan, you do play 3 of the bad boy. So Donphan's got 120 HP, 4 retreat, absolutely massive. Keeps that resistance to lightning and weakness to water. So Exoskeleton is the poke body for Donphan, similar to Ultra Thick. It just takes 20 less damage from attacks, which is just really good. You know, every turn it takes 20 less, which is one of the best parts of this deck. Is such a good just body where you're just taking 20 less every time. If your opponent's trying to chip you, it just is not going to work very well because you're taking 20 less every turn. So that's a really solid poke body. And then the first attack and second attack are also very solid. So for the first attack, 1 fighting for 60, which is a great exchange on a stage 1, and it hits fighting weakness on one of the biggest Pokemon in the format. Magnezone Prime is one of the best primes in the format, so you're able to hit that Pokemon for weakness with this card. And with a Pluspower, you're able to hit 70, which is a knockout. So that's kind of a neat part about Earthquake, is you can one-shot a Magnezone a stage 2 for 1 energy and a trainer, so that's kind of cool. And then the second attack, heavy impact for 3 fighting, does 90, also one shots a Magnezone, but just some really good damage on Donphan. You know, it's changed over the years, but especially in the older formats, if you can get like 30 damage per 1 energy attach, then it's like a pretty good exchange. I also forgot to mention with Earthquake, you do 10 damage to each of your bench Pokemon, which is kind of why the Ultra Thick hide on Phanpy is kind of neat. And if you have other Donphan with Exoskeleton on your bench, they're not taking damage from Earthquake, which is also really nice. Okay, so getting into the second attacker line in this deck, you do play Yanmega as well. So Yanma is the basic for Yanmega. It's got 50 HP, single retreat, resistance to fighting, and a weakness to lightning. So you have different weaknesses and resistance. You kind of cover your weaknesses with both of these guys, which is really nice. And then free flight is the poke body. So if Yanma has no energy attached to it, Yanma's retreat cost is 0, which is an amazing poke body. Essentially, it has free retreat all the time because you usually don't attach energy to it because of the Yanmega. We're not going to talk about the attack because you don't even play grass energy. But you can attack with the Yanmega. So Yanmega's got 110 HP, free retreat, which is super nice, resistance to fighting, and a weakness to lightning. So Insight is the poke body. If you have the same number of cards in your hand as your opponent, the attack cost of each of Yanmega's attack is 0. So you get to attack for free if you have the same amount of cards, which is really, really cool. So first attack is linear attack. Choose one of your opponent's Pokemon. This attack does 40 damage to that Pokemon. So if you have the same amount of cards, you just snipe 40, which is great for setting up knockouts later in the game with your other Pokemon. And then Sonic Boom is also pretty decent. So for free, if you have the same amount of cards, again, you do 70, because that's the only way you can attack. We don't play grass in this deck. If you have the same amount of cards, you just do 70 and you swing for 70 for free, which is really, really solid for essentially no energy attack for free. So yeah, Yanmega Prime, really, really solid attacker as well. Which brings us to the third attacker in the deck, is the Zoroarc line. So you play 2 Zorua. Zorua's got 60 HP, Dark type, resistance to Psychic, and a weakness to Fighting. So Lunge for DCE, flip a coin. If Tails' stack does nothing, can be good. Like I was saying, 30 HP. There's some baby Pokemon that you have the potential to donk with this attack. So this is just the best one. And it's I think the only Zorua. There might be one other one, but this is definitely the best one because you do have that donk opportunity. But you play that to play the Zoroarc. So Zoroarc, it's got 100 HP, Dark type, retains that weakness and resistance. It's got a single retreat. The Zorua has one retreat as well. I forgot to mention that. So Nasty Plot you can't use because we don't play Dark, but Foul Play we do play DCE, so you can use that guy. So Foul Play for DCE, choose one of the defending Pokemon's attacks and use it as his attack. So kind of dependent on your matchup, right? Like, obviously, this Pokemon is really dependent on what kind of Pokemon your opponent has on the board, but there are a plethora of reasons that Foul Play is really good. The first one that comes to mind is Rayquaza Deoxys Legend. So Rayquaza Deoxys Legend, you can one-shot an RDL for a DCE, and you actually don't even have to discard any energy because RDL just says you have to discard all fires attached. If you don't have any fires, then you just don't do it. You just get to hit it for 150 and then take 2 prizes because it's a legend Pokemon. So that's the first thing that comes to mind. It's also really good against Magnezone in certain situations. If you're in a late game state where you have a fair amount of energy on your board, you can Foul Play, take Lost Burn on the Magnezone, and then use Lost Burn as your attack. So that's kind of neat as well. And it really depends on what situation you're in and what your opponent has. But there's a lot of situations where Zoroark's Foul Play can come into use for sure. Okay, so getting into some of the tech attacker and support Pokemon. So Tyrogue, you play one of these guys. It's a baby Pokemon, 30 HP, free retreat, no resistance, no weakness. Sweet Sleeping Face. Every baby Pokemon in this format has this attack, or this body rather. As long as Tyrogue is asleep, prevent all damage done to Tyrogue by attacks. And then Mischievous Punch. This is a donk card. You do this, you play this card just so that you have the ability to donk. In this format, you can attack on your first turn. So if your opponent has like a Magnemite in the active, or if they have another baby Pokemon, and you have you start a Yanma that has free retreat, you have the option to just potentially Collector for a Tyrogue, bench a Tyrogue, retreat, and then Mischievous Punch for the game. So that, not very fun in a casual game of Pokemon, but if you're in a tournament, Mischievous Punch is really just an amazing way to take a round win. And then after that, Tyrogue is asleep, which activates Sweet Sleeping Face. And the other baby Pokemon you play is a Cleffa. So Cleffa's got 30 HP, colorless type, free retreat, no resistance, no weakness. Retains that Sweet Sleeping Face that every baby Pokemon has in this format. And then Eek is the attack on Cleffa. Shuffle your hand to your deck, draw 6 for free, which is just a really solid free attack for sure. And then you also play one Bouffalant. So Bouffalant's got 100 HP, colorless type, 2 retreat, and a weakness to fighting. So Revenge is the main reason you play this guy. So for DCE, does 20 if any of your Pokemon were knocked out by damage from attacks during your opponent's last turn. This attack does 70 more damage, so you're able to swing for 90 for DCE. And like I was saying, if you can get more than 30 damage per energy, then you're usually at a pretty good exchange there. And for a single attachment there, being able to do 90 for a single attach after you get knocked out, and you are going to get your Pokemon knocked out, so it's definitely a really solid Pokemon to be able to strike back with for sure. Okay, so getting into the trainer cards here, starting off with 4 Junk Arm. Junk Arm's an amazing trainer card, so discard 2 cards from your hand and then pick a trainer card from your discard pile and put it back in your hand. The affiliation is kind of confusing in this format because there are trainers and items, and technically, every trainer card is classified as a trainer, although it was really a bit different back in the day. So essentially what Junk Arm can grab is non-stadium, non-supporter cards to the discard. Cards that you'd be able to take back into your hand and then use at that exact same turn, even if you had played a stadium or a supporter already. So just being able to get your resources back. You play a ton of really good trainers. We're going to go over them in just a sec. And that's the reason why Junk Arm's so good, because you have so many good trainer options to be able to get back. So one of those trainer options is Pokemon Communication. Just keeps your Pokemon consistent. Reveal Pokemon in your hand, put it on top of your deck. Then if you do, search your deck for a Pokemon, reveal it, and then put it in your hand. So with as many Pokemon as you're playing, I don't know the exact count. I can kind of 6, 12, 18, 21, which is a decent amount. It's at least a third of the deck. So Pokemon Communication just is able to, switch your Pokemon around. If you have a Yanma and a Dawnfan in your hand, that doesn't really do any good. So you can switch the Dawnfan for a Yanmega, or, kind of whatever you need in that situation. And you also play Pluspowers. So there are some numbers that are pretty important to hit with Pluspower. The first one, like I was saying, with a Donphan, if you Pluspower a Donphan, then it lets you hit 70, which is kills a Magnezone Prime, because Magnezone Prime has 140 HP. So that's a really important reason for Pluspower. But also, depending on what your opponent's board looks like, hitting him with a Yanmega for 80, or if you need to do an additional damage with Zoroarc with a Foul Play, it really is situational depending on the board, or even Revenge. But being able to go Pluspower, Junk Arm, Pluspower, you can even do 20 more damage, and you can just manipulate your numbers so that you're hopefully one-shotting your opponent as often as you'd like. You also play 4 Pokemon Reversal. So Pokemon Reversal is just so you can take out the Pokemon that you want to take out. One of the big things with this deck is you hit for weakness with Dawnfan against the Magnezone, like I was saying. And Zoroarc is, like I was saying, only good against certain of your opponent's Pokemon. So if has to be in the active, so if they have an RDL on their bench, you could bring it up with a Pokemon reversal and then just foul play, knock it out. But usually your opponent's not going to just chuck something in the active for you to swing at that they don't want you to swing at. They're going to have a Cleffa or another baby Pokemon they're kind of just chilling with until they would like to attack. And reversal just lets you get on that first attack and hopefully take that first prize, and it lets you be really, really aggressive. With 4 reversals and 4 junk arm, you have an opportunity to bring up your opponent's bench Pokemon a lot in this deck. They also play 2 switch. So like I was saying, Donphan has a 4 retreat cost. He's a big boy. And then the Zoroarc has a retreat, and the Bouffalant's got a 2 retreat as well. So you do have some Pokemon that have retreat. And with Junk Arm, if you just play 2 switch, it keeps your movement consistent, and you can just be attacking with whatever Pokemon is best to attack with at the time. Okay, so getting into the supporter cards, starting off with 3 Pokemon Collector. Pokemon Collector, amazing card. Search your deck for 3 basic Pokemon, show them to your opponent, put it in your hand. So you can just get every piece you need. You can get Fampy, Yanma, Zorua, or if you need a Cleffa, you can get that as well. Or a Tyrogue if you want a Donk. It really depends on what your board looks like and what your hand is. But being able to search out basic Pokemon is super good because you are a stage 1 deck, so you have to find your basics before you're able to get some attacks going. Let's play 3 Professor Juniper. So one of the best draw support Pokemon's ever printed. Discard your hand, draw 7 cards. Makes a lot of sense, especially in a Junk Arm deck. Like, it kind of seems bad discarding stuff, but when you have the option to get it back with Junk Arm, it's actually not that bad at all. Then you also play 3 Professor Oak's New Theory. So shuffle your hand into your deck and draw 6 cards, which is just a solid shuffle draw supporter. I mean, shuffle draw 6 has always been pretty good. And then you also play 3 Judge. So these judges are mainly for Yanmega, so that you have the same amount of cards in your hand as your opponent when you attack with a Yanmega. So as soon as you find a Yanmega, you can just judge and then immediately get that free attack, which is really nice as well. Okay, so getting into the energy line, you're going to be playing 8 Fighting Energy. Donphan is the only energy-based attacker that we're going to be using the required energy for. Everything else can be colorless or free, depending on what you're attacking with. So yeah, 8 Fighting Energy just means that you have the option to attack with Donphan a lot, and it attacks for 1. So with that 1, you could put 3 on as well, and that's why you play a lot of them, because you do sometimes want to get a heavy impact off, but with a single energy attack, I think 8 is usually plenty. And then you can use those to fulfill the DCE cost for Zoroarc as well, if you're kind of building on that, or the revenge cost. But the better way to do that is through DCE. You do play 3 DCE as well, just because you want to make that cost a little bit more effective if you have the option to do that. And having a single attach, dropping a Zoroarc out of nowhere, lets you be a little bit more tricky. There's not a ton of hand disruption in this format other than Judge. So being able to have a Zorua and then hold a communication and a DCE in your hand, and your opponent doesn't really think you have a Zoroarc, and then all of a sudden you drop it out of nowhere, and then you counter KO their RDL, or whatever the situation is. Being a little bit tricky with that, being able to drop it in 1 turn is a really solid advantage that DCE provides as well. Okay, well, this has been Stage 1s from 2011. If you have any questions about the deck, feel free to leave them in the comments below, and I'll do my best to get to them. And if you're not subbed, hit that sub button. We definitely are on the way to 500 subscribers. Last time I checked, I think we were like 444 exactly, I think. Which is super awesome. We're gaining lots of subs. Lots of people like Pokemon cards, which is great. I'm so grateful to have this awesome community that is liking the Pokemon card nerd videos that I'm putting out. But yeah, thank you guys so much for tuning in, and we will see you next time.